Blog Talk Radio.
People of the States United, welcome to the show, The Constitution Explained. Forget about Limbo and Beck. It's time to turn them off and tune in right here. Make yourself comfortable for the next 2 hours and be ready to be re-affiliated with the founding of our great union. This is the show you all have been waiting for. This is a show where you'll cast aside your indoctrination into the system of lies and relearn the construct of the Union of States as established and ratified in the year of 1789. I am your host, known only as Harry. I strive to assist the people of the states in recognizing the true heritage of liberty and freedom which the establishers of the Union of Individual States had in plan for their future generations. That heritage was not only misunderstood from the initiation of the contract between states, but it was also reconstructed into the monster which we endure today. The people have the power to cage that monster, however, extremely few recognize and utilize those powers. We will be maintaining strict rules of conduct when we are on the air and ask that all callers do the same. This is an educational show, and we desire that children are able to listen to the discussion here without fear of being offended with foul or hateful language. So please feel free to send a chat message or call into the show. We would love to hear from you. Welcome, everybody, whether we have listeners or listeners in the archives. Welcome to the show. As I mentioned in the group and also mentioned, believe on the air last week, the main part of last week I'm just going to replay. Hopefully we have some people tonight that are going to call in or send us chat. Regarding that, we didn't get any last week. We thought it was either Thanksgiving or because I did mess up the links. So it's probably more to do with that. Hopefully we have people coming in tonight. So I'm going to replay that for you now, and then I got some other things to say afterwards. So go ahead and give a listen. The Supreme Court of the United States and the powers that they were granted within the Constitution established for the United States in 1789. I will also speak about representative government. You will consistently hear me refer to the United States on this show, and that the United States of America is not a country, purely the Congress in assembly. The United States is not the states, and the states are not the United States, other than when they act in union through their representation in the Congress when they are assembled. The official piece of ceded land which the Congress is to assemble on is that area we all know as Washington, D.C. The fact is, however, that the Congress in assembly anywhere in the world is in actuality the United States of America. The United States is nothing more than the House of Representatives, the Senate, the President, and the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court of the United States is just exactly what it says. It is the court of the Union. In cases which arise within the extent of their jurisdiction, their judgments are supreme. To the lower courts of the United States, which are the Article 1, Section 8, Clause 9 tribunals, the decisions of the Supreme Court are superior. The Supreme Court is the final appellate court for cases which are out of the jurisdiction of the state courts. Only when a case crosses state lines does the Court of the United States have any power in delegating the solution. The decisions of this court are supreme over the states, not the people of the states. An individual is only under the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court of the United States if their case crosses state lines. Article 3, Section 2 states, the judicial power, and they're not even just talking about the Supreme Court there, the judicial power of the United States shall extend to all cases in law and equity arising under this Constitution. The laws of the United States, which are very few, there's not many lawmaking powers granted the Congress of the United States, and treaties made or which shall be made under their authority to all cases affecting ambassadors, other public ministers and consuls, in other words, employees of the United States, to all cases of admiralty and maritime jurisdiction, again, outside the boundaries of the states, to controversies to which the United States shall be a party. Now, the next section is changed with Article 11, but I'll read it. To controversies between two or more states, between a state and citizens of another state, between citizens of different states, between citizens of the same state claiming lands under grants of different states, and between a state or the citizens thereof and foreign states, citizens or subjects. Again, only in cases which are outside the jurisdiction of the individual states. And I mentioned the second part of that was amended with Amendment 11. And this one's worded a little weird, but I'll do my best I can here. The judicial power of the United States shall not be construed to extend to any suit in law or equity commenced or prosecuted against one of the United States by citizens of another state or by citizens or subjects of any foreign state. I'm hoping somebody calls in tonight because I'm always a little muddy on that one. It sounds like they're making the distinction between the Supreme Court having jurisdiction over only things that arise under the Constitution. And they're making it clear that it has nothing to do with a citizen of one state suing a citizen of another state for a financial loss. In other words, it only, to me, that translates into it's more defining that the Supreme Court is only to handle cases which arise from the Constitution, and they wanted to make it more clear. And like I said, hopefully someone will call in tonight and verify what I'm saying is right or correct me if I'm wrong. Far too often we hear of the case Marbury versus Madison as if it is some sort of banner the supreme robes are lawfully capable of wielding against the free-minded people of the individual states. In the case of Marbury versus Madison, both parties were of the United States. Both parties were in disagreement of a procedure which was under the authority of the United States. This was not a case involved purely within the borders of a state. Any case involved purely within the borders of a state were to never proceed past the borders and be decided upon by the Supreme Court of the United States. The Judiciary Act of 1789, Section 13, states that the Supreme Court shall also have appellate jurisdiction from the circuit courts and courts of the several states in the cases hereinafter specially provided for, and shall have power to issue of writs of prohibition to the district courts when proceedings as courts of admiralty and maritime jurisdiction, and writs of mandamus, which is an order from a court to an inferior government official ordering the government official to properly fulfill their official duties or correct an abuse of discretion, in cases warranted by the principles and usages of law to any courts appointed or persons holding office under the authority of the United States. Again, all of that above is only persons, courts appointed, or persons holding office under the authority of the United States. The state courts and the state Supreme Courts were not under the authority of the United States in 1789. The state appointed their own courts and their own persons holding office of those courts. All of that, of course, was altered in completeness by the 14th Amendment. The unratified Amendment 14, implemented by force, placed not only the people of the states under the jurisdiction of the Congress and Assembly, and the state legislatures under the jurisdiction of the Congress and Assembly, it also placed the state courts and the state Supreme Courts under the jurisdiction of the United States Supreme Court. It is the usurpation of the original document which has suffered the people of the states the jurisprudence of a supreme set of robes dictating mandates to the enforcers who will beat down your door and shoot you if you resist while they enforce unlawful law upon you. Make no mistake, The Constitution for the United States has not been utilized properly by the states in order to keep this entity of self-declared body of superiority under the controls which the words in the Constitution were to be used to bind them. The power of recreating law by these criminals to the founding principles have only the power wielded by the badged enforcers. These decisions and jurisprudence handed down at the clapping of the gavel have no basis in being referred to as the law of the land, for they each are created outside the realm of the document. Thomas Jefferson wrote, "At the establishment of our constitutions, the judicial bodies were supposed to be the most helpless and harmless members of the government. Experience, however, soon showed in what way they were to become the most dangerous, that their decisions, seeming to concern individual suitors only, passed silent and unheeded by the public at large. That these decisions, nevertheless, become law by precedent, sapping by little and little foundations of the Constitution, and working its chains by construction, before anyone has perceived that invisible and helpless worm has been busily employed in consuming its substance." In reference to the government itself using the courts, Thomas Jefferson also said, "The government created by this compact was not made the exclusive or final judge of the extent of the powers delegated to itself, since that would have made its discretion and not the Constitution the measure of its powers." So that's enough tonight on the Supreme Court, unless people call in and carry this discussion further. I want to try to discuss and describe the original plan of the Union, how the founders and the framers set it up. And I want to try to get people to understand what representative government is. We do not have representative government. Representative government is not where we just cast a vote on poll day and send someone to an office to do what they want. Representative government is where we elect somebody that is going to come back to our communities on every issue, not with 3,000-page, one-page laws. That representative government is not where we send somebody there to decide what laws will rule us. You go down there and you just do what you want to do because we've put you in place. Representative government is where representative comes back to the people in the communities and explains everything that is looking to be passed. And then the communities tell that representative on every law. And like I started to say earlier, 2,000-page laws, no. One-page laws that say we want the state, or if it's the United States representative, we want the United States to do this for us. That is what representative government is in a Republican form of government, where the people tell the government what they will do for us. It's the opposite today. Representative government is not where we go and see who gives the biggest smile, who kisses the most babies, who waves the hardest at the street corner holding up a sign. That's the thing that has to change. So the president is purely the executive branch of the United States. He rides roughshod over the Congress. The president has oversight over their bill creation. It was only during war that the president had any real power. The president was not meant to have an agenda when entering office. Campaigning to the public should not even be happening. James Madison said, "The executive has no right to decide the question whether there is or is not a cause for declaring war." So the president isn't even supposed to be going to Congress and saying, let's go to war. The representatives of the people and the representative of the states, which is the Senate, are supposed to be deciding whether we go to war or not the president. The job of president is extremely easy in a constitutional America. The job of president, for the most part, entails only that he sits between our voice, the House of Representatives, and the state's voice, the Senate, before Amendment 17, and denies, to the best of their ability, the two entities from ever crossing the line of the limits placed upon the creation of law. The President is the only person tasked with the responsibility to interpret the Constitution. He alone is the one to keep a watchful mind on the power-greedy members within Congress and vigilantly return to them each and every bill which is placed in front of his face, which steps out of the boundaries of the enumerated powers, which are actually enumerated tasks to be performed for the states, granted within the pages of the Constitution. James Madison also said, the operations of the federal government will be most extensive and important in times of war and danger, those of the state governments in times of peace and security. The House of Representatives will be filled with representatives of people of exact districts. Outside influence into local voting for representation is an abomination to the lawful structure. Our representative is supposed to represent us, no one else. They should be headed to Washington with no agendas outside the task listed in Article 1, Section 8. Your town doesn't have a proper postal route. You petition your representative to get it done. The principle of representative government is so lost today, it is to the point of non-existent. Nancy Pelosi traveling outside of California to campaign for Democrats to be elected, or Donald Trump traveling to Iowa to campaign for Republicans, is not representative government. In fact, these actions are an abomination to the principle of representative government. The results of these sort of campaigns never end up with the voice of the people being represented in Congress. It ends up with agendas being the voice. Agendas never equate to liberty and freedom. Representative government is exactly what it says. It is a government where our thoughts, our decisions, our mood is represented when the government assembles for the purpose of carrying out the task which the people have assigned for them to do. Representative government is when the communities through town hall meetings vote on all legislation as to how the community as a whole or as a supermajority deems the legislation should be created. Representative government is where the individual elected carries the exact voice of their respective community to the Assembly of Government, and all votes on legislation are as directed by their home community. The Senate was the voice of the state pushing back upon the people's voice until Amendment 17, which was ratified by 14th Amendment unlawful state legislative branches. The senators were appointed by the state legislative branch. The people were not to have a decision who was sent to Washington as senator other than changing their own state legislatures. The people of the states and some supermajority of the communities are to be the say in what takes place in state governments in Republican form of government, just as the states and supermajority are supposed to be in control of the Congress of the United States. Rather than a representative elected by a community to voice the opinion of only their own community, the communities as a whole state are to be represented by the senators. The electors of the president were appointed by the states. They were chosen in whatever way the people of the states, through their elective legislative branches, chose to appoint them. However, no person holding an office of trust or profit under the United States, the Congress, was allowed to be an elector. The vice president is not supposed to be running as mate. Read Article 2, which was amended by Amendment 12. The vice president is also to be elected by the electors. Now, I have in many of the groups and some outside of the groups been baffled, we've all been baffled, at where and when this usurpation of the plan was first initiated. Most history will tell you that Burr was Jefferson's running mate. I am totally confident that is not true. When the presidents running for office started choosing their running mate, I believe that was also around the 1860s, but we have not been able to find an actual date where we can say this is the first one and this is where the plan was changed without an amendment. Article 2, amended by 12, still has the vice president with a separate election. Article 1 says first place election is president, second place is vice president. Amendment 12 says that there's two separate elections, one election for president, one for vice president. Three branches of government, all to be placed into office in different procedures. Today, all of these offices are being filled by the popular vote, even though they're still using the electoral college, but they're not. It's not being used as it was designed. They all now answer to the voters. That is the basis to the corruption we see. That is why the swamp needs to be concreted over and made into a huge parking lot. So that is our topics for tonight. Please call us and discuss them on the air. We'd love to talk to you. The number to call in is 516-595-8117. And I'll repeat that, 516-595-8117. Okay, and then I kind of touched on taxes in the middle of that, and I put something else together I want you all to listen to that kind of makes that more clear as far as what I was trying to say about taxes in representative government as set up in the Constitution established for the United States. This is something I'd like to add to what I was talking about during the earlier part. When I was mentioning representative government and I was distinguishing between the voice of the people, the House of Representatives, and the voice of the states, the Senate. As has always been the case in human history throughout every society, no matter what type of government was set up, no matter what the limits were on what the government was supposed to do, the people always seek more for the government to do for them, the people. And that's the case with what has taken place over our history, even though the Constitution tried very hard to limit that. Representatives were to go to the meeting of the House of Representatives and try to affect change, as everybody wants change. Everybody always wants change. And the House of Representatives was the voice of the people. The voice of the people going to government and say, we want you to do more for us, which always costs more money. The Senate was representing the state, where the state was the one who always received the bill from the U.S. Congress. And the Senate was the voice for the state to try to limit the increase in things that the U.S. Congress would do for the states or for the people of the states. So the Senate was always going to the Assembly of Congress with the idea we need to keep the costs down. So that's why the Constitution was set up with the two branches, one the voice of the people and one the voice of the state. So no matter how much the people of the state requested from the Congress of the U.S. to do more, there was always this buffering agent of the Senate trying to limit the increase of taxes to the state. Well, somebody just called in. Somebody called in.
Yeah, I'm not over there yet. Go ahead, take it.
Hello.
Hello, Harry. This is Thomas Maddox. How you doing?
Oh, man, I was afraid of that. What's up? What's up, buddy?
I'm not just listening to Paul.
Did you manage to catch it? Did you manage to catch any of the show at all up till now?
On your show, it says Constitution Explained, U.S. Constitution Explained.
Yeah.
I caught a little bit of the first part of it, but then I didn't have a flash player, so I tried to start downloading that. But anyway, so what's the topic tonight, there, big guy?
Man, you needed to listen to it. It's 3 hours long. You didn't listen to my 3-hour speech? No, actually, it was 19 minutes. So you didn't catch that?
Like I said, I just caught a little bit of it,
Okay.
the last part of it, because I was busy.
Well, the main two things that I covered tonight so far, there's something else I'm going to cover a little later. We stay on, depending on how long we stay on, was the Supreme Court's powers and how the Marbury versus Madison may have, to go condensed version, may have proved that the Supreme Court of the United States has the power to declare something constitutional or not constitutional within the United States government. Their decisions do not apply to the people of the states unless it's a case that has come to them because it falls within the realms, people from one state to another, things that cross the borders. As long as it fell within the realms of what was the powers given them in Article 3, and then amended by, I always have to pull out it was 11 was the amendment of the Supreme Court, 12 was the amendment of the President, Vice President vote, wasn't it? Yeah, 11 was the Supreme Court amendment, so that the only time the Supreme Court had anything to do with the people of the states was if it was a case that rose to them under the description of those Article 3 and Amendment 11. That it's only Amendment 14 applied those powers of the Supreme Court to the people. So take that. That's my first part of what I talked about. So take off with that if you got anything to say or add or argue or debate. That's the word I'm looking for.
Well, Marbury versus Madison was a federal case about federal officers.
Yes.
And so, yeah, they had jurisdiction over that, but it was a totally screwed up case. If I remember right, it never that was never a completed case, and the other party didn't show up, and it was like whatever. Wasn't that under Jefferson?
Oh no. I think so because Madison was his. I don't know what was the office Madison held under Jefferson, but my little talk was on how they used that as a precedent when it comes to them having jurisdiction over the people. Only the 14th Amendment allowed the precedent set in Marbury versus Madison. Only the 14th Amendment allowed it to be applied to the people. Before that, the way you said it was exactly right. It was a federal case, so it was under the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court.
Well, yeah, the 14th Amendment fraudulently turned everybody into U.S. citizens, and because they don't know any better that it's a total fraud, then it placed everybody under it. So,
yep.
Yeah.
Under the Congress's jurisdiction and under the Supreme Court's jurisdiction. We're not in a free world. We're not even supposed to be under the jurisdiction of any more than 12 of our peers. People don't understand that.
Yeah, that's the problem. Nobody gets what's going on except a few of us.
Yeah. Well,
and
not even. They were all indoctrinated like we were, and it's a fact that the average person will get more angry at someone that tries to tell them the truth than they'll get angry at the person that lied to them.
Yeah. The lie is the norm today. And I see it every day in some of the groups that I moderate. And I'm an admin on. And, yeah, they want to come in and talk nonsense, and you're like, hey, did you come in here to learn or teach? You know?
Yeah. Yep. Well, then my other piece I talked about tonight was trying to explain to people representative government. That representative government is not just where we go to the polls and pick a representative and say, hey, go do what you want. It's where the representative comes back to us with legislation on the board, and whatever our representative of our community brings to us, we vote on, and they go back with that vote. Not, oh, well, I'm going to do this. And we've gotten so far away from that. We're not represented anymore. Just because we have a person there with a badge that says, I'm a representative, we're not represented.
Yeah, we haven't been for 150, 160 years, at least.
I wonder how much we were before that. People just don't understand it.
Well, yeah, they kept it secret from the people for 50 years. Didn't release it to the people till the 1820s. Now we've got the public full system, totally subverting any of our heritage, any of our founding. It's totally insane, and I think we're just beating a dead horse on the internet.
Yeah, we're meeting people
because they have been indoctrinated, and I keep repeating that quote by Marion Metz. A person that is educated wrong is worse off than a person not educated at all. And we have people that will argue, oh, you racist son of a so-and-so. That Civil War was about slavery. What, do you want to return to slavery? No, it wasn't about slavery, and I don't want to enslave anybody.
Yeah, the person that called in on the first show kept wanting to go there, and I kept trying to stay away from it because it's just this. It's just so they've just so been indoctrinated into believing that Lincoln attacked the South to get rid of slavery, and they're so also indoctrinated in believing that the ends justify the means. Well, Tom, yeah. I'm probably going to read one of the other things I was going to read tonight, and who knows, maybe we'll get some people to call in. I don't know. I don't know if I've got my links working. Some other people were commenting on Facebook. I don't know if I got links working yet. I don't know if I know what I'm doing on that Facebook. We got to figure that out. So I think I'm going to go ahead and read this other thing and see if anybody else does call in or say anything on Facebook. And then there's one other message I had for tonight, and then we might call it early again tonight because it's just I was hoping to have more traffic. All right. Well, glad to see you're interested, and I'm glad to see the people are having trouble with the links, or at least interested.
There's one guy commenting in the comment section on the show about FDR was our last lawfully elected president. Anyway, there's one guy on there listening and probably commenting. I couldn't get on the live chat on your page on blogtalkradio.com because my flash player is not up to date or some kind of garbage. Some guy answered on there and said FDR was the last president on your blogtalkradio.com page.
Huh.
So, was FDR our last lawfully elected president?
I don't think so.
Harry, the gentleman commenting on the Blog Talk chat, or that's chat, but the comments is Ryan.
Yeah.
Oh, Ryan.
Too lazy to call it.
He's probably afraid he's going to get retribution if he calls in and makes a statement like that on air. I don't even know where to go with that. Pretty sure Lincoln was the last lawfully elected, and I don't even know how
No, I don't believe he was.
legitimate his election was. I haven't studied that part of history enough.
Like I said, he wasn't on any Southern ballot. How did he get elected? I don't get it.
Well, the election of 1860, perhaps. 1861, no. Right? I mean, 1864, no. It's Ryan.
Uh-oh.
Hey.
One of us is in for trouble.
Yeah, well, I'm about to show you some trouble here.
Hey,
no,
I want to ask you. I have been trying to find out who every other president after FDR had a running mate. So you're telling me all the way up through FDR they were following the Constitution and following Amendment 12?
I'm not gonna say that they were following the Constitution, but as far as separate ballots go, and I could be wrong, but I believe that's what I heard. I'm going to have to go back and double check my source that I got that from and rewatch that little video again. But I believe that is, you were questioning who was the last, when running mates became a thing. And it just kind of happened. It was something that the two parties got together and shook hands and said, hey, we're going to have running mates now. We're not going to hold two.
Yeah, and they didn't do an amendment. But if you look in history, they'll tell you that Aaron Burr was Jefferson's running mate. They worded it just like that. It's like, no.
Yeah, and that's completely false. That's not factual history. They had separate ballots, separate elections for president and vice, and I believe it was every president after FDR that just decided, hey, we're going to have running mates now. But again, I can't say that's a matter of fact. I'm going to have to recheck that.
Because I was pretty certain
that
I was pretty certain that I read that Lincoln. I was pretty certain that I did read that Lincoln did pick his running mate. So I thought it was at least that far back, but I'd really like to see some documentation showing something, because some of this stuff was so hard. Have you ever tried to find actual executive orders of the presidents up until Reconstruction? I mean, you can find a list. Oh, this one did this many, this, but I have yet to find documentation showing what executive orders consisted of before Reconstruction. And I'm sure it was just stuff that dealt with messages between the president and the Congress. It had nothing to do with any other part of the Union.
I believe where I heard that, and I'm going to have to check again, but it was Chris Ann Hall's weekly journal she does. Podcast with her and her husband, and her husband J.C. Hall, I believe, was the one that actually stated that, and I think he had some sources to back it up. I'm going to have to go back and try to find that podcast again and listen to it again, see if I can't dig up the sources that he stated.
I'd like to see some documentation of exactly when this election was 2 votes, and this election was 1 vote, including running mate. I'd like to see some documentation, because that is a big part of my show, is explaining to people what took place and when.
Yeah, I was just going to say one thing about Chris Ann Hall. Some of her stuff is questionable because she is a proponent of denying that the 14th Amendment and Reconstruction Acts didn't do anything to change the structure of government. And we got video of her claiming that when she was having a roundtable meeting with John Ainsworth. And so some of the stuff I don't know, where she seems to have come out of nowhere. very recently, within the last 4 or 5 years, starting to make all these things. So I would just be cautious about taking all of her stuff as just because everybody studies the Constitution, everybody says what they believe that they've interpreted it to be. So I just be cautious. Now, if it was at the FDR when they changed the structure. Previously, it was the person that got the most votes was president. The second person that got the votes was the vice president. That may have been holding true up past Lincoln, but it may have been changed at FDR's time when the two parties that through Reconstruction, because there were still some other parties that were fighting to get nominations and get on tickets and stuff. But the Democratic and the Republican Party platforms, the RNC and the DNC, if that was the way they wanted to change their platform structure to streamline it, then that has a whole different bearing.
Yeah, but the lawful way was the amendment, and they never did. The Amendment 12 technically still holds true. One vote for president and one vote for vice president. 12 changed Article 2.
Right.
Article 2 says one election for president. No, first place president, second place vice president. Amendment 2 changed it to 2 separate elections by the electors.
Okay.
But still, that's not what's done today.
Right. I think it's because the Democratic Party and the Republican Party became the two dominant parties of the left and right paradigm, and so if their committees decided, well, this is the way we're going to start running it because we're under a Reconstruction government and we're not operating under the Constitution, they can do whatever they want without an amendment or not.
Yeah, because the people didn't say no because they consented to it. But if they knew the truth, I think they would go back to the other way. If they understood the structure in the first place, I think they would go back to the original because it just makes so much more sense.
That's all I got to say.
Okay, well, Ryan, if you got something else to throw in there and you can hang on, I'm going to read one more thing that I wanted to say. It had to do with things going on in Facebook that I wanted to say, and I wanted it to be heard coming from my mouth and let the chips fall where they're going to fall, but I think it's an important thing to say. And you want to say something before, and if you want to hang on, maybe say something after. What do you got?
No, I about the only thing that I have to respond to Paul is I agree with you about taking everything that Chris Ann Hall says with a grain of salt, but he does put out a lot of important material, I think, and I study material. I study your guys' material. I study there's another college online. I forget the name of it, but I study that material. So I study from a lot of different sources, as well as read the Federalist Papers, the Anti-Federalist Papers, the Constitution itself, and so on. So, I do agree with you that needs to be taken with a grain of salt, but at the same time, I think all sources need to be taken with a grain of salt and your own research done, backed up what they're saying, if that makes sense.
And that's what we strive to do. In fact, I'm going to make a comment towards the end of before we're done tonight. It kind of falls right in line with that. But I'm going to go ahead and put you on mute. I'm going to read this other thing I wanted to say tonight. And like I said, this is the one where I'm going to let the chips fall where they fall, because there's going to be people that aren't going to like what I have to say here, and some people are going to love it. And I'll get back on afterwards, see if you got a comment. Okay?
Sounds good.
I just wanted to mention something that always seems to be a huge topic and has especially been talked about a lot this week on Facebook. I'm talking about the topic of people saying the phrase Christian nation. and that is what the founders planned for it to be. First off, the founders did not establish a nation. Sure, when the Congress assembles, and especially when the militia of all the several nations draw together to go to war, the idea of national could be applied. The plain simple fact is that the design intended for the people of the states was to live in peace most of the time, not to be at constant war, including amongst themselves, and the states to remain sovereign in all things other than what was listed in the Constitution established for the United States. As far as the Christian part, yes, most of the founders and framers were of the Christian faith, and yes, considered the teachings of Christ and held to the fact that every human is equal to any other, no matter what they held in belief. They also held, in fact, that each individual deserved to choose their own path in life. The principles of the divisional forces of contrastive religions, however, was purposely excluded from the original construct of the Union. It is well known that throughout history, the honoring of different forms of the unknown has caused more strife, more conflict, and more death than any other force. Not even the force of nature holds a candle to the death and destruction religious variations have caused in the past and has continued into the present. What the future of mankind holds in store, if allowed, is the perpetuation of a huge, megalomaniac occupied governing force which continues to breed and fester. It continues to claim more and more power over the intended to be free individuals of the states and, worse, the whole world. The people are not going to stand a chance of being victorious over recaging this beast if they continue to stand divided. The words, "This is a Christian nation," is and always has been a phrase of division. The use of it by those who are Christian is interpreted by those who aren't as being some sort of indication of intellectual superiority, as a certain percentage of those who wield the words, without a doubt, believe that it does. We are never going to win the fight of true freedom without all walks of life pulling themselves together and ignoring the differences of the individual standing alongside. The goal of liberty for all, no matter what others believe, must be the banner we choose to bear in the war we are waging against tyrants. The word phrase, "This is a Christian nation," must be put aside, or we might as well find better things to do with our time. Go fishing, ride a bike, or get a hobby. Anyone who believes that they are going to make themselves free without making their neighbors free is doing nothing more than wasting everyone's time. We are not going to restore the individual's right to freedom and liberty unless we accept all people of all theological philosophies, including those without one, as our friends and stand side by side with them in our efforts. In ending this rant, I just want to say that if you want your freedom, if you want your liberties, if you want the rights of the individual restored to their proper levels, then you must accept that your neighbor, your friends, and your families must also have those freedoms and liberties restored. If your goal in getting out of your comfy chair in recent history is to convert more people into believing that we must restore this thing you call a Christian nation, then please stay out of our way. We have a lot of work to do to restore our freedoms. If your goal is to join us, then do just that. Join us in our battle to return to sanity, and we will manage to be triumphant. All right. Well, I said it, and we'll see what happens.
Oh, now you just went and opened up a can of worms, Harry.
Well, I said I was going to open a can of worms and let the chips fall where they're going to fall. It had to be said. We need to join.
I do agree with you. That's exactly why we have a First Amendment.
Yep.
Our founders believed that everybody would have the right to practice whatever religion they wanted. They had the right to pray to any god or worship any god or no
or
god
none.
at all.
Thank you. I almost beat you to that.
And that is written. I've actually got the First Amendment right here in Congress. Shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or of the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievance. That's right there in black and white.
Yep.
Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So that right there says this is not a Christian nation. Now, I do have to say that the founders, I think most of them were very religious people, and they were Christians. And I do believe that a lot of fundamental Christian beliefs kind of help to guide them and in the writing of the Constitution, if that makes sense. They instilled the core values and beliefs of Christianity.
There was huge Christian influence. There's no doubt about that.
Right. Yeah. Now I have to ask, after all that, and knowing that, and I just said it, Congress should make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Does that mean that we, as a people, as individuals, have to accept something like Sharia law being dropped on our doorstep? Sharia law, in my opinion, has no place in this country. It does not fall within any of our constitutional bounds, or any of our constitutional. I can't say they're our bounds because they're not our bounds; they're government bounds. But you know what I mean. The Sharia law doesn't align with foundation.
Well, that's a real complicated question with a complicated answer. First off, we got to comprehend that law in itself is not added or subtracted to the people under a jurisdiction in Republican form of government. So does Sharia law apply to the people of a state universally? No, unless the people of the state. Let me finish this, because like I said, it's a complicated answer. Unless the people of a state, in supermajority of their communities, so that means the whole state pretty much says we want Sharia law within our state. Unless that happens, it can't be accepted and enforced upon the unwilling. Now, if you're a member of a religion that accepts Sharia law, and you are voluntarily, and when voluntarily means at the last second, you can say, no, I want nothing to do with this. If you get it out of your mouth before the sword comes down and chops off your head, you've just been murdered. But you've been murdered. So as long as it's practiced by certain people, and all the people that are practicing it voluntarily, it's none of my business. None of our business.
And I agree with that. The only part the biggest problem I have, Sharia law specifically, is that part of Sharia law says that, death to the infidels. If you do not accept Sharia law, we will kill you. And that once they start doing that, you throw them in front of 12 peers, and the 12 peers say take them out and chop their head off. Now, now you're talking where it's going to spread into the involuntary. For them to come and start killing the infidel
That infidel is not voluntary to their law.
Right.
Then they're stopped.
But that's what I'm saying. And in order, I mean, and I don't think that it'll ever be instituted in this country. I don't really think that they have a ground
in these countries, there. Ryan. In these countries.
Right. Yeah. In these
countries.
Free and sovereign states.
Yeah. We're gonna correct you every time you make that mistake. Don't worry. We'll get you reprogrammed.
But you know what I'm saying. I don't think it can.
As long as it's only within the voluntary. As long as it exists only within the voluntary.
See, and I have to, if I truly want to stand up for the Constitution and support the Constitution fully, I have to acknowledge that Muslims have their place. They are free to practice that, and I have no problem with that. Honestly, they can do whatever they want.
And if they want to start a community, a town where it's Sharia law, and that's Sharia law, and you know it's Sharia law before you enter it, and now their community has and now their community has a voice in the State House. But as long as they're not keeping anybody captive and under Sharia law involuntarily, it's none of our business.
Right. It's their right to practice as long as they do not somebody else's natural right.
Exactly. I'll stand by them side by side to fight these tyrants that have taken over our sovereign nations. I'll stand with anybody that wants Sharia law. Yep.
I would too, until they, until they pull a sword out and tell me I have to kneel. Because I don't kneel for a Christian cross either.
Yeah. Like I say,
that's just me.
Once it crosses over from the voluntary to the involuntary, now there's a problem. Now it is our business.
Right. Okay. Yep. Well, that's a fair answer, I think. And I don't know how many people have pissed off, but.
I'm hoping they all learn. I'm hoping they listen to this stuff and learn what true freedom and true liberty actually means. Because they haven't been taught what it means in school or even in their families. Because very few people understand it. Very few people understand that by right, I can jump up in any crowded auditorium and scream fire. But if I truly believe in freedom and the rights of everybody else, stand there and take whatever punishment, financial loss, whatever, for any damage done by my actions. That's what true liberty is.
So,
true liberty is when hang on, let me finish this. True liberty is when my dog jumps over a fence and mauls the kids in the next door. I'm running in the house for my checkbook, not the phone number to my lawyer. That's true liberty and true freedom.
And isn't that exactly the meaning behind self-governance?
Yes. Yes.
You should be able to self-govern. That is the way we were set up. We were supposed to be self-governing, and that was
self-responsible.
Right.
And self-responsible.
That was the. I'm at a loss for words, but that was basically what the founders were getting at with self-governing. You've got to be able to take responsibility for yourself, and if you don't, somebody else will. If you can't govern yourself, somebody else will, and that's just the bottom line right there. If you can't be responsible enough and own up to your own actions, take responsibility for your own actions, somebody else will. Somebody else will make you.
Are you familiar with Teddy Roosevelt's speech? It behooves me. Basically, he says if the man cannot govern himself, he must be governed.
I'm not actually familiar with that, no. But.
How quick are you finding that, Paul? Quick enough to come back on? Teddy Roosevelt made a speech.
The 1907 Johnstown speech.
Do you have
got
it?
No, I
not easily found.
Didn't know you were going to bring it up, and I don't know exactly where it is right now.
Well, Ryan's going to have to start Skyping you with pre-orders, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, don't do that because I'm barely capable of talking on the phone and drinking my beer at the same time. So.
Hi.
So somebody gets to drink tonight.
Yeah, I'm not working, so it's okay.
Yeah, we're on strict one beer per show rationing on this show.
I'd be making some pretty short shows then.
I would drink more beer during the show, but the bathroom's too far away.
You got a mute button. Anyway, I just a real quick thought here, or whatever. I listened to about a half an hour of you guys trying to decide if you were on air or not. So you're going to have quite a bit of editing, tonight.
Oh yeah, I go through and edit all this stuff, so it's nice and smooth. I edit the times when I get stuck. Yeah.
Well,
I got a nice little editing program.
Yeah, now that we
comment, but
now that we discovered that we got to also be on the show page to see what's going on in the comment section. But once we get the Facebook group page cleaned up, we could either do a group chat for the show, or we could just do a post that people can comment in instead of trying to jump all over the place and try to figure out where people are.
So what I have to do to get onto the show is the original post Harry put out. I had to copy that link and paste it into my browser.
Right, he didn't make a hyperlink.
And then it brought me to the Blog Talk Radio.
Yeah, I'll get it figured out. When I'm setting up the event and I copy and paste the URL, it pops up a little window that says use this. I'm like, okay. So I click on that. And I think that's what I need to not do or find out why. And I'm putting it in where's the place location. Maybe there's someplace else in there that I'm supposed to be clicking for a link. And I'll figure it out. I always do. All righty. Well, I got one last thing to say about next week's planned show. And then I think we'll call it a night. I think we've accomplished as much as we're going to. We only have a half hour left anyway. Probably by the time I edit this down, it's going to be about an hour and 15 minutes and easy listening. So, Ryan, I want to thank you again. I'm going to mute you, hang on, or hang up, whichever one you want to do, and I hope to talk to you again soon.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay, I want to make an announcement about what was proposed for next week. I'm not complaining. As a self-employed person, it's times like this that allows me to afford my bills when I don't have times like this. I have been absolutely inundated at work for the last month. I've just barely got these shows together as I've done them. I have many of the sections of the Constitution pretty much down as far as what I want to say on my show for those sections. Paul wants me to take the Constitution in its order, the preamble first. I couldn't agree more. We need to do the preamble first. I'm not ready for that. I want to make the preamble show right, 100% right, as close to 100% right as I can make it. I happen to think the preamble, that little short piece of the Constitution at the beginning of it, I happen to feel the preamble is probably the number one most important section of the Constitution until you get to the reconstruction of it in Amendment 14. I want my next show to be right. We might take a couple weeks at this. Paul has supplied me with a lot of information that I've managed to scan through, and then I've got mine, and I've got files of stuff. I want to make this right, so just be patient with us. And I think according to the blog site, people are listening to the archives. We just got to get the bugs worked out of actually bringing them to the live show. But it'll be a couple of weeks. Be patient. I could only hope my business stays as busy as it is for 2 or 3 more months, but it just never does. Eventually it drops right out. And then I promise I will devote that extra time to getting this thing right. And I will try to give everybody a week advance and then remind them a couple of days ahead of time when we're ready to do our show on the preamble. So that's the show for tonight. Paul, you're going to jump in and at least say goodbye? Well, he's sending me
I had to get
it.
Well, I didn't know you were going to throw it back to me that fast. I mean, I don't mind. We should sit down and get what you want to say exactly perfect. Make sure that there's no, ambiguity in any of the, of the information that could be left open to interpretation, like Webster did to us. So. I was going to say, if we want to start with the preamble show in a couple weeks, that's fine. I would still say that we should still do a general call-in show next week to make sure we got the bugs worked out.
Let's get the links worked out, and those people that are listening but can never get on, who knows? Maybe next week we'll be inundated with calls saying, if we finally fix everything and actually bring people here. That work, because I know at least a couple more people were trying to get on. I saw the messages.
Well, I know we have modern technology today, but I don't think Alexander Graham Bell had this much difficulty.
Well, I always claimed to be Einstein,
Watson?
anyways, not Bell. No, Einstein. I never claimed to be Bell.
Okay.
I could have told you why Bell's invention worked. I probably couldn't have built it.
Yeah, it was between 2 rooms.
All righty. So let's do that. We'll do a chat. I'll explain things in the group. Hopefully we'll get this show set up properly so people can find it. And hopefully that anybody that has listened but couldn't get on will come on next week and say, hey, it's about time you heard me. So we'll see what happens. All right. Well, I'm going to do the closing and hit the end episode, and then I'm going to get back to things like maybe even going to bed early tonight.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks, Paul.
Bye.
Bye. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. Anybody that has listened to the show tonight, thanks for the interest, and we'll see you, and we'll talk to you in the future, hopefully.